Go. Boom. We're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Palantir Weekly in Review. This is episode number 9. We've been doing this for 9 weeks. We have two very, very special guests on the podcast today. We have Darntons, or Christian, from the Darntons channel. You guys probably know him if you've been keeping up with Palantir. And then we have an OG in the Palantir community, Dom, who has been at a job for a little bit, hasn't been able to make too much content, but Palantir has obviously been on his mind, and he wanted to get some thoughts out there because he loves good old Palantir. So we're going to be here today. We're going to be reviewing a bunch of stuff that happened in Palantir. I want to start off, Chris is a couple minutes late. I want to start off the conversations with you, Christian.
Sure.
Can you kind of tell us who you are and how did you get into Palantir over the past couple of?
Yeah. So I'm Christian. I'm from Darntons YouTube channel. We basically post podcasts every week, Wednesday, 12 a.m. GMT, focused on innovation. And I got involved with Palantir after DPO, so it was fairly early on. And I just had a fascination with kind of innovation and certain equities. And Palantir was one on my radar that I was monitoring for a long time. So I've been buying for a long time. I've been in the stock, since fairly close after DPO. And since then, my conviction has kind of just grown within the company. I have a thesis, an original thesis that has been laid out, and it's just been building. So that's kind of how I got involved. And I mean, I can't remember the specifics, but it was, serendipity, perhaps to say the least, that I found Palantir out of the thousands of stocks that are in markets. So yeah, I'm a big shareholder. Out of the current, my portfolio is very concentrated. I'm all for taking big risks in my current situation. So Tesla, Palantir, and then I buy the S&P monthly. But I mean, that's something that is perhaps a minor position in comparison to my more highly convicted plays.
And you're 19, correct?
Yes, I've been investing for 5 years or so. As I stated before we started recording, under my mom's name, trading penny stocks and doing some stupid stuff. But I mean, I've learned so much. Just learning on the job is kind of my philosophy for everything, for like business, for investing. Everything that I've kind of got fairly good at has been from just learning on the job. So that's kind of my philosophy, and I think it's very applicable to other areas of life.
So that means in high school you started getting into this stuff.
Yeah, early on. I mean, friends were just talking about it. I had no idea, absolutely no idea how to invest or anything. I was very young. I still am very young in the grand scheme of things. But I think I'm just incredibly conscientious of my actions and like very analytical of myself. And as an investor, I think that's like of utmost importance. Just like that kind of radical transparency and radical truth that you can have with yourself. So yeah, I love investing. I sometimes feel like it's a zero-sum game, just money for money's sake. But this is kind of why I'm specifically interested in Palantir, because they're producing like a societal good that is a real tangible benefit that they're producing, at least from my perspective. So yeah.
Now, last question I want to ask you before we move on to Palantir, Darntons. The way I hear you talk about it is that it's a media company focused on innovation and growth. Can you speak a little bit to kind of what your vision is for the channel, and why is it called Darntons? This is his last name, that's why?
Yeah, last name.
You're trying to go the Bloomberg route? You're trying to
yeah. So we have a media application.
Turn the stupid soundboard off. Okay, there we go. Good.
Yeah, so we have a media application now, Darntons.com, and basically my philosophy is that, let me just take a step back, that innovation, I don't mean to kind of follow Kathy Wood here, but I do think there's kind of some applicable examples that she has. Innovation, I believe we're entering a period within society in which exponential growth occurs within certain innovative equities and companies. For example, within the data scene, within the Tesla scene, for example, we've seen how AI leads to potential winner-takes-all markets, right? And I think we're really at the inception phase of this huge period of growth that is going to be occurring. So from my perspective, there's no media company that solely focuses on innovation within public markets, and I think it's a really underlooked area. So yeah, we have the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel focused on clips, and then we have the media application, as you can see on the screen here. So we're just getting started. on the media application, but I'm really passionate about innovation. And I think if you kind of combine that with the Jim Cramers of the world, like the media situation now, in terms of the financial area, it's pessimistic to say the least. I mean, Jim Cramer, CNBC, all of these big channels, I fail to see how they provide real value, and I think that we can change that. So.
No, I like this. You're going the alternative media route. I think all of us as YouTubers are obviously following the same route, alternative media. And, alternative media, I mean, it's probably going to win just because people are looking for other perspectives. That's why 40 people are watching us on a Friday night. Are you producing all the content on Darntons, or are you looking for people to kind of help with the company?
Yeah. I won't say too much now, but I mean, I'm in talks with potential co-founders, etc., and have been for some time. This has been a project that I've worked on for like over a year now, and it started off as something completely different. I can code and program, so I started developing some stuff in like on the blockchain. It wasn't really any good, to be honest, and I realized fairly early on that the project wasn't going to go anywhere. So it's kind of morphed into this idea. And I kind of think sometimes within the context of business, it's important to go like back to basics sometimes. I had all these like radical ideas and it just would cost so much.
And one of the most basic ideas is a media company, because especially at your age, I mean, it's what I'm doing, right? You put out content, you can forget, like, monetization is the easiest, advertising or subscription, but it's also like you are in full control of the destiny of a media company, because if you just keep creating and you're good at marketing, people can know about you, right? And like, this is what I think Elon said. He's like, before you try to build something crazy, try doing something on the internet. He was quoted like this. That's why he did PayPal before Tesla and SpaceX, right?
Yeah.
So content. Can I just say that what Christian's accomplished at age 19, you're so far ahead of the game. As the old man of the group, with the only one with the grays, I wish that I had your foresight at age 19. And I mean, I don't know what 14-year-old starts investing. I know there's a few of them on Twitter that have started at that age. But with the long-term compounding and time horizon, as long as you stay true to that, you will be doing so well by my age and further.
And also, this comment is probably why you're going to become a millionaire in the media.
I know. This is the thing. I've been like, even though I'm interested in investing in business, some reason every venture that I go into, there's people that say you need to do voiceover acting and stuff like this, especially now because it's late here. Like, my voice is very croaky, so it should sound good now.
Was there an age where you noticed, oh shit, my voice can like make me rich?
No, I haven't made any.
I told him when I first heard that voice, I was like, he's in the wrong business, man. He needs to do some voiceover.
Morgan Freeman made his living off this, right? Or Howard Stern, right?
Like, like,
sometimes you got the voice. That's it. Like,
I mean, if someone's watching and wants me to do a voiceover.
You know who you remind me of? This guy, Cold Fusion. I don't know if anyone here has been on YouTube and like gone to like Cold Fusion. He does like documentary style like videos on like events that had just happened. Like, he did one on WeWork and like the collapse of WeWork. But like the entire time, that voice keeps you engaged. Some people, they have like this monotone voice that'll put you to sleep. Yours is like, wow, you could be spewing the biggest like heap of bullshit and people will be like, wow, this guy is so smart.
I mean, you can watch like a National Geographic documentary, like two wolves fighting, and he can make it interesting. You get like, I'm not gonna lie, that's a nice little side hustle you should definitely take advantage of.
I will do, hopefully. I mean, if anyone's watching and wants me to voice over, a movie, dude, anything.
Get on Fiverr. Literally, all you need is Fiverr.
Yeah, you will. You're gonna make bank on Fiverr. But so, in the context of media focused on innovation, does that mean you're trying to find stocks, kind of like what Kathy's doing? Obviously, she's managing an ETF, but you're trying to find, the T-Docs of the world, the Palantirs of the world, and you're trying to create. Like, I guess I'm asking, are you trying to create articles? Are you trying to create research? Yeah. Like, what are you trying to sell to the audience in terms of
just it's like an ecosystem of news, of research, of podcast, of YouTube content, etc. And overall, you have like this holistic combination of just content that is unbelievably powerful. And I don't think it should be like trivialized. Content is so powerful. Like, the reach you can get is immense. And I'm sure, like with you guys, your YouTube. If you look at the analytics, I mean, like impressions, views, everything is crazy. And I think we're only at the start of this creator economy. So
and the good thing is you're recognizing this at 19, man. Like people in college, they think like their degree is gonna. I was like, no, like get
No.
50,000 followers. You don't need that degree.
it's
ever.
I kind of have it in my mind, and hopefully no one from my university's watching this, but like universities like a load of rubbish in my opinion. I mean, it's
I love how we
important
said rubbish in brains, like a load of rubbish. A load of rubbish. It's bloody foolish.
Yeah, no,
So here's a quick question, Christian. How would you define innovation? Because I know innovation can be defined in many ways, and one of the things that I always challenge myself is to define whether a company is about invention or about innovation, right? So my definition is 10 times, like I have the 10x rule. So that usually what I try to associate with any product, any company is what are they doing that's 10x better than something that already exists, right? So an example is Google, right? Google, everyone's like, oh, search engine. Trust me, there were other search engines before that. There was Yahoo, there was Lycos, there was Hotbot, there's tons. But Google ended up making a product that was 10 times better, right? So you look at Tesla. Tesla did not invent the electric car. What they did was they made the electric car 10 times better, and then they were able to make it so that it wasn't as 10 times as more expensive. So it was actually 10 times cheaper than the nearest competitor when it came to like a real full-on electric car. So I think what it is, so my question to you is, what is your criteria for considering a company innovative versus just inventive as they're trying to like research new things?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Innovation inherently, I believe, is fairly unpredictable, and I think I formulated kind of 8 pillars that I use and apply to each company, including I think actually some other YouTube channel uses this, and I didn't realize before. Everything Money, I think, uses like a similar formulation. I promise I didn't get it from them. Just for clarity, but I kind of have 8 pillars, including switching costs, etc., indirect and direct network effects. And once you've applied all of these pillars towards a company, I think historically you kind of can gauge when a company is going to be extremely innovative. For example, if you look back on Google, I mean, they had indirect, direct network effects. The majority of my 8 pillars kind of met. So I use this 8-pillar formulation when it comes to finding a company. But it's a good question. Like, I think innovation starts probably within the culture in comparison to a tangible product or something. And I'm not sure how one would define it. Perhaps your example of a 10x improvement is fairly good in that context, because we're going to say something.
For me, it would just, what I try to do is whenever I try to create key concepts on investing, I try not to take too many things and put them into like, I know everyone's got their own methodologies. I like to keep it very simple, right?
Okay.
If it's a product that I think that society already uses on a huge scale, but that they can do better very quickly, or very cheaply, or a 10 times better experience, then that's what it was. So my definition just comes from my own personal understanding, because one of the things that I tried to do, and it's very similar to your methodology, where I tried to create benchmarks and gauges where I would say, okay, this company does this much in revenue, so that means that they're this innovative, right? Or that this is what they're trying to do. They have this many employees. So I never found every metric to be 100% aligned with what companies ended up showing in return in terms of like an innovative product. So like, I'll give you the perfect example. I think it's perfect to describe Palantir as an innovative company. Like, why do I think Palantir is
Not according to
innovative,
Kathy
right?
Wood.
Right. Not according to Kathy Wood, but I'll explain right here. Data science is something that everyone is doing right now. All right. Every organization right now has some level of data analytics, whether it's very simple BI tools where they're just taking their data and putting it on a dashboard and then operationalizing decisions based on visualizing past performance, right? Or whether they're actually hiring teams of scientists and data engineers to figure out where they're missing certain things. What Palantir is doing is they're making the process 10 times easier, right? Where you don't need as many resources to get the same result that you would have gotten if you had tried to do what you were doing. And the other thing is, and it's something that Coach Strap very said, and even in Gartner says it, the failure rate is so high. So if you think about it, even if, let's say, you committed $1 million to Palantir versus committing $1 million to developing your own product, well, guess what? You're going to fail so many times that you're going to have to spend almost $10 million to get the same end result that Palantir could get you on the first try. So if you think about it, it's like, wow, even though Palantir is going to cost me $1 million, what am I going to save? I'm going to save a ton of time. I'm going to save a ton of money. I'm going to save a ton of hiring talent and operational resources that I could be committing to other parts of my business. So I don't need to do all this extra data science. I don't need to hire, like an entire, like little army of data scientists to figure out how to make things better. I can just get a company that's going to be able to do what I'm trying to do. And I think that's the key. So a lot of the companies right now that are getting Palantir, you can see in their videos, that's what they're describing. They're saying, look, this is something that we're already doing, but Palantir is helping us do it in a way that we can do it very quickly and very efficiently. And when you think about the total cost, probably 10 times cheaper. Even though the contract with Palantir seems sometimes a little bit expensive, it ends up working out, especially if you have a long visionary, how to actually gauge the total cost of doing something. Because the total cost of implementing projects is not necessarily just buying a product. It's also getting all the people that you have to adopt it, getting executives to actually use it, right? And all of that stuff takes time, energy, resources. So I think Palantir has created a product where they kind of taken a lot of that friction out and taking a lot of that guesswork out and being able to kind of like help an organization go from A to B without having too much, without committing too many resources to it. Yeah.
One thing I would want to say though with that is the problem needs to be big enough, right? There's a lot of things that can be 10x better, and it really doesn't matter. It doesn't change your life. So like when I look at innovation and disruption, you guys have seen me do my 5P score, and I really look at these 5 things of, first off, when we're investing in people. Like at the end of the day, you're investing in that owner, that creator that created a problem, a solution to solve a problem and a vision that they want to see through, that they believe will ultimately make it a better world we live in, which is what Christian said earlier about how he's excited to be an investor of Palantir. So I think that's important. You also have to have that company culture that supports that vision, supports that owner, and is sustainable, because if that owner were to die or leave, you still have the sustainable culture and drive. Then the second thing is, how big is that TAM? How big is, when you talk about data science, the reason why Palantir is so special and the idea of data science is data is expanding exponentially. I mean, if there's one thing we can all agree here that no one can defy, is it's the next 3 years, there'll be more data than there's been since the last 40 years, right? And we know that that's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So they're playing an important role. And then to your point, Chris, about the dashboards, and we've worked and consulted in for companies like this, there's a difference between making decisions on previous assumptions and past performance and making real life decisions in real time, right? That
Dom, given what you're saying right now, I want you to continue your analysis under this headline. This is our first topic of the day. Palantir and Accenture, and Dom, I'll let you talk first on this. They've launched a partnership of 1,000 foundry experts in an innovation studio. I'll read a quote from the press release. We're now excited to announce a new partnership between Palantir and Accenture, highlighting the force multiplier Palantir Foundry represents to Accenture's clients. Accenture Applied Intelligence is working with Palantir to build an innovation center, the APS, Accenture Palantir Studio, housing over 1,000 experts on Foundry, Palantir's flagship software, who will build and design new cutting-edge solutions. With the creation of this new innovation center, we're talking about what innovation means right now. Accenture will be expanding their capabilities in Palantir Foundry to bring newfound value to their clients. Accenture has 91%, or right here, their current clients include 91 of the Fortune 100 and 3/4 of the Fortune Global 500. So when we're talking about innovation and Palantir being an innovative company in a space that's growing, Dom, can you speak to what you thought this partnership with Accenture is gonna do for the company?
Yeah, so I believe they already had partnerships with Deloitte. They now have the Accenture one. We also got the announcement of Carasoft, and I'll explain why that's so huge as well. They are in mass scale mode, right? they are now ready to pull back the covers and say, we're here, we're ready. We are full-time going in, and we are committing to more of the general technology culture that it is of software sales. We've heard Carp say, hey, we don't need salespeople, we don't need marketing. Now we see the flip-flop, and we see a ton of sales guys being added, and they're pumping the press, they're getting in interviews, they're working with people like Accenture and Deloitte, who are and IBM, who are known for being enterprise consultants. So what this does is this allows them to scale without having to hire all those heads. You don't have to pay the stock-based compensation for those people. Instead, they're Accenture employees learning the platform, evangelizing, consulting. And then when they did the Carahsoft partnership, what was so unique about that is that's a distributor. Like VMware works with them. Like everybody works with Carahsoft in the government because they're known to be a very easy to do work with distributor. And that tells you that their product and modularizing Foundry, they're ready to get transactional, which is exciting. It's almost like they're laying the groundwork to be more transactional. So it'll be interesting to see what that customer account growth happens in the next 12 months.
Christian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think, touching on some previous comments, the macro is so clear. It's so inevitable that, as you stated, the growth rate of data is going to grow like at exponential rates. It's not linear. It's really exponential growth. And I think, as from like an investor standpoint, it's understanding which company is going to best capitalize. And for me, that's Palantir. So just leading on from what you're saying, I haven't been this bullish on Palantir ever. And I think my conviction is continually growing. They're doing everything that I'm wanting them to do. And with this recent venture and the recent ventures we've seen, it just indicates that they're focusing on modularity. They're focusing on selling the product, which we know is a historical bottleneck for the company. I've never heard of any complaints when it comes to Palantir software. The issue that I think is evident, and we all agree on, I believe, is the fact that they have a bottleneck within Salesforce. So when we see these ventures, it's the best thing for investors, and it indicates that Palantir are focusing on modularity. They're focusing on distribution, and I think it's important to understand we're not going to see these results, within the next quarter. This will be showing within, perhaps end of year. We'll see some evident examples of how these ventures are now improving their distribution, and therefore will impact their customer acquisitions quarter over quarter. So yeah, I'm really excited, and once again, I haven't been this convicted upon the company for a long time.
One of the things I want to highlight about this additional partnerships is, and Dom knows this because he's in software sales, you need to have that inside connection to get you through the door, right? You need to have someone on the other side say, yes, I trust this person, or I trust the company that they work for. We had long-standing relationships with them. They've never done us dirty. So one of the things that I know that even with Palantir developing their own sales force, it's really hard to be a brand new company, go into a business or an organization and say, hey, we have this great product, right? Because they're going to say, well, what is Palantir? Who is Palantir? We've never worked with you guys before. You guys don't have a service contract with us. You don't have a business agreement with us. And that's very important because all those agreements have been done for so long already. So now, if you have a partner in someone like IBM, who's been a solutions provider, if you have someone like Accenture, Deloitte, all the big consulting companies, they have that trust factor already built in that, hey, this company is not going to sell us some vaporware, right? Whereas, trust me, we have a ton of vendors come through our door trying to sell us the next greatest product in the world. Everyone and their mother, they say, oh, you just get this software. We'll even give it to you for free for a year. The service contract is free. We use it. It's dog shit. And now we just spent all this time, resources, money, and training on people. Training is a huge cost because I deal with it. That now you just can't get back, right? So a lot of organizations, they're like, listen, you're the 10th guy to walk through my door today. What makes you different? So that partnership with Accenture, that partnership with Carahsoft, that gives you that additional credibility that you need to get your product in the door. And then once people are using it, what ends up happening is that level of confidence starts building out, right? And then other people in the industry are going to start to kind of adopt it as well. So I think these partnerships are big. That's actually, I think, bigger than the Salesforce hiring. Local Salesforce hiring is a good idea. Don't get me wrong, but you definitely need channel partners to push your product to help you out. So maybe Dom, you want to speak to that a little bit?
I was laughing because I lived this world for over 20 years, and you hit on such a key thing that people are not paying attention to unless you work in this world of software sales, and Twitter is a Carasoft relationship with their Carasoft rep could be 5-10 years. CDW or Accenture, there are customers that have went to their reseller's wedding or whatever it may be. They're that close in relationship and service that will mean a lot more from Johnny on the spot come and say, hey, you need to check this Palantir out, versus the Palantir guy saying, hey, I'm here. We got the best stuff on the block. You haven't heard of us, but let me just show you and you'll buy.
Tom, I'll give you guys a really funny example. I actually spoke to a sales rep from Palantir, and I gave them the keys to the kingdom. I said, look, I cannot advocate for you from my organization, but I can point you into the right direction. This is the person that you need to talk to. I spoke to that person about a couple of days ago. I said, hey, man, what happened? I gave you this information like 2 months ago. Did you reach out? And they're like, the guy never even called me back. I've been trying to reach out to him on multiple platforms. Nothing, right? I said, you know what? You need to reach out to this other company, which I'm not going to name because they're actually working together now. Guess what? Now they actually have a meeting set up because you have a channel partner who we have a really strong relationship with that's going to be able to actually vouch for you to get you through that door.
It's cosigns. Like when you like to do a little hip hop reference, Drake wasn't Drake until Lil Wayne put him on a mixtape. And like Lil Wayne was a god in rap before Drake. It's like it's warm introductions. It's not what you do, it's who you know. And with a company like Palantir that's trying to grow exponentially, like Accenture, they work with everybody. Like everybody works with Accenture. So if Palantir, that's why the weird thing was this innovation studio with 1,000 Foundry experts. I mean, I'd never heard of a partnership where you get 1,000 people that are experts at Foundry that are able to work with clients in real time to modularize Foundry for them and provide them solutions. This was huge news for me. I mean, I think it was great. And we knew about this in November. I think now it's official, but it seems like it's
one other thing to Chris's point that we want to make sure to hit on. It's great when you get the customer, but the other key facet piece is you have to be able to show realized valuation, time to value quickly in a relationship and prove out what you sold them and get that ROI. And then if you do so, you will then get the trust to get that expansion contract, that next department, that next level CIO introduction for more larger purchases. This is what they do so well. That's why I keep hitting on contribution margin, because there's no other software company I've ever seen with this kind of sales model of we're going to lose money on acquire. We're going to then expand and go into other departments, and we're going to finally make a little bit of money over 100K contracts. And then we're going to show you so much realized time value with everyone else. We've done our part. Now you got to give us the big contract, right, in the scale phase. And then they keep getting the renewals. And so that is what is so impressive with that 130% net revenue expansion.
There is one downside to these partnerships, though, and I hope everyone remembers this. You definitely are going to see margin compression because your total gross is going to have to be sacrificed a little bit. Okay, what that means is you think Accenture is doing all this for free? You think all these companies are saying, yeah, we're going to sell your product for free. No, they're going to sell your product. They're going to support your product. They're going to get experts on board to help the companies get their product out there, get your product out there. But guess what? They're also going to be charging.
But if the gross margins are 80%, how much of a compression?
And I'm glad exactly that you said that, because that's the point right there. You can try to grow organically over the next 10 years, or you can get a partner like this in 2 years, grow the same amount, but you're sacrificing some of that margin, right? The key to Palantir's value proposition here is that Palantir has so much margin to play around with. They have an 80% gross margin right now. So it's almost like, hey, I'm not only making 20%, where if I sacrifice 5%, it's going to be a big hit to me. They got literally 80% of that revenue. 80% of that gross margin if they were to giving up 10, 20, 30. It just kind of depends on the partnership, how close they are aligned. These are all contracts that are done on the back end. But one of the things that I think we're definitely going to see is margin compression from Palantir, but growth is going to explode.
But that's what they need, right? So we know that they have margin growth, expansion capabilities in their contribution margin model. We know that they are going to grow, and expand in larger contracts. What they need now is the hook. I need more fishermen out there throwing bait who have those trusted relationships. So let's scale. And Accenture has global relationships, right?
Agreed. All right, next news story. This one was a big one. And by the way, guys, this is on dailypalantir.com, publication dedicated to Palantir. This was big. So Shyam Sankar did an interview with Emily Chang from Bloomberg, and she straight up asked him, hey, Russia, Ukraine, you guys are the ones that are supposed to be solving this, right? What have you done? Shyam quoted and said, we have really mobilized our entire company against the invasion in Ukraine and the consequences of that. I think in many ways, we believe the situation was foreseeable. And at the time of our listing, we talked quite publicly about how we would not work with the Russian government and actually with Russian companies, given the overall context there. But now our software is being used to power refugee operations from Romania, Poland, Lithuania, all across Europe. And we know this was happening because EtherSquare, a great Twitter account, showed a link that it was a foundry.gov link that went back to Lithuania. And, where there was some speculation, are they working together? There's this new link, but everyone's like, a link doesn't matter. Well, apparently it did matter, because now we know that Palantir was working with European countries on the refugee operations. To give some context, the main data problem there is you've got refugees and then you've got sponsors. So let's say you have a Ukrainian refugee, and there's millions, unfortunately, that have been unplaced because of the war, that are vegan. They can't go into a household where there's a lot of meat, right? There's a lot of data and variables that are involved. Maybe there's there's so many different things to properly house a refugee in a meaningful way. There's a lot of data privacy that's involved. All these countries that are opening up their borders, these people aren't citizens in Lithuania, but they have to be accounted for because Lithuania is being nice and opening up their borders. So very, very big data problem. Shyam also talked about how they're working with companies now to deal with their supply chain and their logistics, and BMW was one of those examples. So Christian, let's start off with you. What was your reaction to this news when we got explicit confirmation that Palantir is working with the Ukrainian refugee crisis?
Yeah, it was expected. The thing about Palantir, they've noted very clearly that they are supporting the West, and I think it's a very noble thing to do. Not many companies, especially in the Valley, kind of propose this view. So number one, it was expected, and it's interesting to say the least that they've had some involvement within the recent crisis. I think also it's important to note that Palantir are literally at the forefront of these interesting paradigms within society. Number one, obviously the geopolitical events that are occurring, leading to clear chaos, but also in the sense of data chaos. And you have these interesting paradigms that are kind of intertwining within society, and Palantir is literally at the pinnacle and the forefront of those. So I think it's exciting to see where this company can go. It's exciting to see that they have this clear, noble goal in terms of protection of the West. And people used to criticize Palantir, stating that their TAM's not big enough because they can't work with Russian companies and Chinese companies, etc. But now you look at McDonald's pulled out of Russia, and all of these large companies pulled out of Russia, etc. And it shows that Palantir really pursuing this ideological view is, in my opinion, very noble and a great thing to do. So it was expected. I think that we should see, more involvement now of Palantir within European nations, which is something that I'm expecting at least within the next quarter. So very excited, and I think once again a very noble thing for Palantir to do. And they're really riding some huge waves, not only from a geopolitical view, but also just from the kind of macro view of data.
Chris, your thoughts?
So I think this is one of the highlights. I think that we should give some props to management for recognizing early. Essentially, one of the key things that they did early on that made a lot of sense was, one, not get involved with the adversaries. They knew that because of their contacts with the government business and everything else, that this was something that they weren't going to do from the get-go. So right now, a lot of companies are figuring out ways to take themselves out of Russia, and even to some degree China, because now they're starting to feel like, hey, that adversarial role and that new Cold War is starting to creep up. So how do we insulate ourselves from that Chinese involvement? Right now, one of the biggest, in my opinion, risks that companies have is their exposure to China. If a significant amount of your revenue is coming from China, and tomorrow morning we start in a Cold War scenario where they nationalize a product that you usually were getting a big short chunk of your revenue from, that's a huge risk. So an example is Tesla. Right now, Tesla is getting a significant amount of revenue in China, because they have a factory in China, they're building in China. But what if the CCP tomorrow says, hey, guess what? America's no longer our friend, cut it off the supply chain, and now Tesla would be stuck in a bad position. What's worse is Apple, who's almost 80 to 90% of their supply chain is based in China. So how do companies get around that? So a lot of efforts right now are going around in the industry, especially the tech industry, on how to reshore some of that productive capacity. Now, which company does not have to worry about that? Well, there's one company, Palantir, doesn't have to worry about China or Russia, because they knew way ahead of time that we were not even going to entertain the idea of trying to involve ourselves in that business. And also there are huge issues around technology transfers with the Chinese that, Palantir probably didn't want to risk also, because there's a lot of government secrets. And when you have a company, I'll tell you right now, any company that you work with in China is an arm of the CCP. No matter how much you try to say, oh yeah, they're an independent private company, either the CCP is somehow regulating that company, or is involved in that company's operating, or can be leveraged to operate on their behalf at any given time. So Palantir from the get-go just said, look, we're not going to do that. Now, where does that benefit Palantir? Not only does it benefit Eastern Europe, it benefits Asia. Right now, all of our allies right now in South Korea, Japan, Australia, if you look at outside of just Europe and the US, there's huge offices in those three countries also that's growing exponentially. We look at the deals in South Korea, like with Doosan, with same thing with Hyundai Heavy, with Japan, with Sampo. These are huge contracts, and guess why they got them? Well, one, they don't have an involvement in China. Had they been involved in China, the Japanese and the South Koreans would have said, no, we can't do business with you because of your involvement there. And that's like I said, this was the foresight. This was the foresight that management had in saying that, hey, even though we're closing up one market, it's giving us the opportunity to open business in another market.
Well, they saw to your point, the foresight of there's only going to be two really major powers that are going toe to toe, and that's going to be China and that's going to be the US. And they were able to make sure that they were able to build other relationships with the other different countries, and will continue to do so as long as they're Western allies, and expand from there. But their business isn't in jeopardy. So I'll give you an example. Nvidia, my second largest holding, who I love dearly, if they were to have Taiwan Semiconductor go down and get taken out by the Chinese government, and China takes over on Taiwan, there'd be a lot of semiconductor companies that are hurting, like Nvidia, who does 50% of their production from Taiwan Semiconductor. I think Broadcom does 75%. So you can see how we're dependent on a lot of different things with the Chinese government. But to your point, with Palantir, you never have to worry about it. That's one thing you don't have to worry about.
It's interesting to look back when Google were working with China for certain AI projects, and Thiel called them out very early on. And I mean, I didn't really expect, any of this to occur, especially the conflict within the recent times. But it has highlighted the vision by Karp and Thiel and management overall. So credit where credit is due. I mean, it's a fairly bold thing to say when you're trying to build a massive company. One may argue that you're not going to work with such large nations, right? But in hindsight, it seems to have played off. And I mean, you speculate over the viability of Google, competing ever with Palantir in consideration of their past relationships with China. So it's an interesting area to theorize over.
It's another way they kind of monopolize their ethos and their business, because if you're not working with Russia and China, you are a pseudo monopoly. I mean, because every other country would love to work with those giants, because there's about 2 billion people across them, right? Or 1.5 billion people that they could have access to. Now, granted, Google and Facebook, these guys are consumer businesses at the end of the day. So their TAM is unlimited because there's billions of consumers. Palantir is a B2B business, but nonetheless, if you're going to offer a consumer product in a country that's probably going to restrict how you offer it, given the nature of freedom of speech, then it's something that they'll never be able to compete with Palantir on an ethos level. How did you guys feel about Peter Thiel's quote at the Bitcoin conference yesterday, where he said that Warren Buffett is a sociopathic grandfather who is the number one enemy, or like number 5 enemy to Bitcoin? Personally, I thought it was laughable. I love Peter Thiel, but I thought this was a little ridiculous what he was saying. I think it's fair to criticize him at that level. I get he's a libertarian, but it was a very kind of like, there was hundreds of thousands of people, or at least like tens of thousands of people in that crowd, and he put up a screen with Warren Buffett, and he framed him as the enemy. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, are you mobilizing these thousands of people to like follow this cult of herding? Like, it was really very weird to me. It was not a good look, in my opinion, for Thiel, just taking this ad hominem attack. But how did you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I think. Shall I go ahead? I think that that the demonization of like these old investors, right, is ridiculous. I mean, the amount of experience that they have should not be trivialized at all. And I agree. He sometimes goes on these like random kind of rants that are very like aggressive and sometimes look kind of very close-minded, I guess you could say, which is strange. I disagree with him. And I think like I'm against like BTC, to be honest. I'm interested in the whole Bitcoin space, but BTC, I think there's some.
You don't think crypto is innovative, right, Darton?
No, I do think crypto is innovative, just not BTC, not
Okay.
the kind of religion that it's turned into. So he definitely does go on these random rampages, but I mean, yeah, you can't demonize these OG investors, in which have shown their track record, especially in their younger years. I think it was something crazy to do, to be honest.
Chris?
I thought this was a masterstroke in marketing. Okay. If you are trying to get a message and you want the message to go as wide and as far as possible,
You got to be aggressive.
You got to be aggressive, and you got to target the person who is the living embodiment of what you are trying to disrupt, right? Warren Buffett is old money. Warren Buffett is old investing style. Or Warren Buffett pretty much epitomizes what investing is to hedge funds and all these big guys. I'll tell you right now, I am not agreeing with him on certain verbiage, but at the same time, Warren Buffett, everyone thinks is like this warm, cuddly old man who's, like he shows up to Dairy Queen and Coca-Cola. But this is the same business operator who'll cut your throat open during a time when you're stressed. And guess what? He'll ask for huge asks from you, because at the end of the day, he's a very shrewd investor. I'll give you an example. In 2008, when the whole financial crisis was going on and, some of the banks turned to Warren Buffett, Buffett wasn't like warm and cuddly, like, yeah, I'm going to save the economy. I'll help you. Here's a few $1 billion, Goldman Sachs. It was, I'm going to loan shark you. And that's what Warren Buffett is. Warren Buffett is the biggest professional loan shark that's out there. And he utilizes his notoriety, his power to pretty much almost like gain this, how do I say this? To gain this leverage over certain companies in order to be profitable, right? Now, why do I think Peter Thiel went after him? Well, like I said, he epitomizes the old world thinking, right? If you're trying to disrupt, you gotta target the biggest whale out there. If right now Peter Thiel said, I think some small investor is not smart by investing in Coca-Cola, no one would have even batted an eye. But bro, you went after the Oracle of Omaha. And to have that level of conviction that Peter Thiel does is actually kind of refreshing to see. And here's the part that you have to give Peter Thiel a little bit credit for. He speaks his mind, right?
He's a contrarian. He doesn't care.
He's a contrarian, yeah. But he speaks his mind. And I think there is a certain subset of the population, and even some subset of the retail and investing community, that like that kind of talk, that kind of want to follow that along. Because if you think about it, the opposite side has been bashing Bitcoin since day one, right? You know how many people have been saying, oh, Bitcoin is worthless. Bitcoin is nothing. Bitcoin is like vaporware, right? Everyone has been saying that. So this is just Peter Thiel fighting back. right? These are all the big ones finally taking a stand and saying, we're not wrong, you're goddamn wrong. And the fact that we have someone like Peter too, who's a goddamn billionaire on the side of Bitcoin, actually makes me want to buy some Bitcoin.
Can I say something? I'm concerned. Like I've gone down many rabbit holes with this BTC space. I owned some in the past, right? But I'm no longer in BTC. I just think these guys have such a huge incentive to kind of
You think they're
mislead.
pumping?
I think that I don't think Peter is, but I think there are. I call them BTC core, basically the core developers behind the original fork of the Bitcoin consensus protocol. There's a huge incentive to spread misinformation and mislead a crowd of individuals who I believe are vulnerable to investing in BTC. Like you said, Chris, like people would hear the billionaire Peter Thiel wants to buy more Bitcoin, and they instantaneously buy this stuff. It's like, have you actually looked into this in detail? I question it, but I think yeah, Chris is a good point in terms of marketing. I just question the incentive. Maybe I guess that's the correct way of putting it.
Dom, your thoughts on Thiel's quote?
Yeah, I'm like in between. I'd prefer more the humility route. Just my take. But to Chris's point, when you're a multi-billionaire, you probably don't have a lot of humility, and you don't care what people think, and you'll do whatever you want, and that's how you've lived your life for quite some time now. And it was probably very effective marketing. We're talking about it right now, so it was effective. Do I agree with it? Does it get me excited about BTC? No. Do I believe that blockchain technology and crypto will play I won't even say critical, but will be important in our future? Yeah. Do I care to wager and when that's going to really come mainstream and invest in that? Not my cup of tea. I would rather invest in a couple of companies like Coinbase and Square that a little more reliable. I know that I can value their company and know that they have big incentives either way. Or Silverbank Trust, Silvergate, where they're a bank, but yet they also are the biggest funding, turning crypto into US dollars. But yeah, Peter, I don't know. He's just going to do what he's going to do, right? Like those kind of guys are going to do that. I don't think it was maybe the best route to go, but he got what he wanted. People are talking about.
Sean in the chat says genius and eccentricity often travel together. I agree with that. And Chris, I think you bring up a phenomenal point that goes to Sean's comment, which is like, you gotta be radical and say something, even if it's going to turn some people off, to get people to listen. And that's what matters. Emmanuel, thank you for the super chat. You said, Christian, if we can't trust Thiel about Bitcoin, should we doubt him about Palantir? Which leads me to another question.
Sure.
Why doesn't Palantir have Bitcoin on the balance sheet if the co-founder is saying that like Bitcoin is basically, the almighty savior from the government? Like why hasn't he influenced the company to put it on the balance? Why do they have gold instead?
Yeah, I mean, gold is I question. I mean, maybe Thiel is obviously a big advocate of BTC, and perhaps like ideologically deep down, he really does agree with the values of BTC, etc., and believes that the Lightning Network will scale and therefore Bitcoin will rise in price. But I question whether maybe Alex doesn't, and the rest of kind of the team are more skeptical. They did speak about this though months ago. I think it must have been last year that there was some speculation over adding.
They said it was too volatile, I believe, right?
Did they say that?
Yeah, they said it was too. They would rather be prepared for a gold swan event with the 50 million in gold. They knew what they were getting and knew what they had in storage. But yet they know that there's a lot of people trying to push this space. And so they have Foundry for crypto. They saw a problem that they're going to end up being.
But it's confusing because if Palantir is supposed to be the innovative company, like Tesla bought Bitcoin, right? Tesla's like, let's go.
They don't have to be involved in every single thing that's quote unquote innovative. I mean,
I agree, but if the co-founder is over here saying it's the next best thing,
that's where you got to really do your research on. Thiel doesn't make all the calls, right? Like Karp and Thiel are definitely they're buds, but there's some things they don't see eye to eye on. And so it'd be interesting to see what that dynamic is. And that's something we'll never know is how do decisions get made at Palantir? That would be a really interesting thing to know,
One of the things that I noticed is especially when I look at a lot of the interviews on some of the forums and everything else with Palantir employees, they lean pretty heavily to the other side. There's not a very big libertarian presence at Palantir. Majority of the people there follow Alex Karp and Alex Karp's way of thinking. Now, yes, Peter Thiel is a co-founder, but his operational guidance is not necessarily 100% there. And there's one very case point that I can just say right now, and you guys yeah, I never thought of that, and it's how they do sales. If you look at 0 to 1, it says clearly, when you're doing sales, you need people that are experts in sales, and you need to have people that are dedicated to selling. Palantir for 17 years did not do that. If Thiel was really running the organization, that would have been built in from day one. It wasn't. So it just goes to show you that Peter Thiel has his name on the door somewhere at Palantir, but has no real operational ability to make any moves. He's on the board at Palantir, which means that he can lend guidance. But at the end of the day, Karp is who's running the company. And I think right now, some of the newer stuff that we're seeing, that's Peter Thiel's influence starting to kind of come in. But I think for the last 17 years, not 17, but maybe for the last 10 years, Peter Thiel had very little to do with Palantir. Very little. Just because, like I said, I think the company's culture and values and everything, there's probably some of the messaging that Peter Thiel probably helped craft, but I don't necessarily think that Peter Thiel is so involved in Palantir. And I hate to say this, but I wish Peter Thiel wasn't necessarily 100% involved in Palantir right now, or at least that, there was a way that the company could kind of project that out, that message to say, look, you guys all hate Peter Thiel, thus you hate Palantir. Because even if you saw, Jay posted a video earlier today, Jay Palantrillion, about, a civil liberties and privacy person talking about Palantir. And the person on the opposite side of that literally did nothing but attack Peter Thiel, and then thus, because of Peter Thiel, attacked Palantir, right? And said that, they're just spying and everything else. How much of all of the negative press and negative comments are coming because of Peter Thiel's affiliations with actors on the other side of things?
That's why he left Facebook, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's, before he had to step down and really kind of keep it quiet with his interactions with Trump, right? Like, they were catching a lot of heat because, he funded a good, or at least contributed a portion to the Trump administration. And so that created additional conflict.
This super chat, Dr. Z, that's a dumb question. If you're right about one thing, you're wrong about all. I don't think that's what we said. I just think, I don't even know what you're referring to be honest. I think we said Palantir might be wrong about one element when it comes to picking Bitcoin over. I actually have no idea what that's referring to. I'm trying to fix that.
I think what they were saying was
rephrase the question. I actually want to answer this. Rephrase the question to something that's a little.
I think what he was saying was how can you trust Peter Thiel for Palantir but not Bitcoin? You'd either have to vote for both or not. Okay. And what I would answer that is do your own due diligence, right? Like I don't trust Peter. I don't trust Alex. I don't trust any of you guys for me to buy shares. Like, yes, when you guys dig up new stuff, that saves me time on research, but I still go and do the research. I read it. I digest it. I see if I agree with it. Like, the only way you will have your own conviction is if you do the work to then feel like, you know what, if I lose my money, at least I know I did the work and I feel I believe in this. Opposed to Tom Nash said this was dope, I'm going to go buy it.
That makes sense. He's responding to my super chat. I love how he responded to your super chat with a super chat. They're like they had to get.
Bro, keep it going. Keep hitting these super chats. I'm all about that. Keep it going.
Okay, we got about 7 minutes left because I got to get out of here at 10. We covered most of the stories. The PG&E thing. It's not the biggest story in the world, but what are your guys' thoughts on Palantir incorporating with PG&E to stop wildfires?
Dude, I'm gonna say right now, I thought that was huge. Because have a company.
They've been doing it since November, but they made it official today with the video.
No. What I love about this, PG&E is huge. A massive scaled utility. If you needed a better case study on how to prevent forest fires, and if you can operationally have PG&E, which has literally been at the other end of huge lawsuits, has been on the other end of blackouts and all these other issues, guess what? If you can help them get better, that means that every other utility provider in the entire world, think about how many utility providers there are, between not just in the US, but all over the world. That is going to expand out huge in terms of contracts because, like I said, it could say, well, PG&E was a train wreck, and then Palantir came in, was able to help them operationalize their decisions, and then guess what? PG&E isn't necessarily that bad anymore. Guess what? We need to get Palantir also. And now that they've already done all the legwork in getting Palantir integrated on a utility scale level, they can port that over to other utilities very easily. And that's going to be huge for Palantir. So I think this was a very bullish thing.
I agree. Dom?
Yeah, so I mean, Nvidia is also doing a lot of things with digital twins and working with trying to stop forest fires and things of that nature. And AI, and what we're seeing is AI is helping make decisions and in industries, making real world impacts in different industries. And if you can show an example like this with PG&E and replicate that, well, if I'm a competitor, I want to be a part of that. I don't want people going to this company because of X, Y, and Z advantage. That's kind of also why some of their customers are not named, because I'm sure they put stipulations in those contracts like, yeah, we're a Palantir customer, but you can't name us because I don't want Toyota knowing that you're helping us with our analytics on our cars. So I just think it's another use case, right? Like they're picking specific problems and then they're going out and solving them.
But Dom, this is the best thing. Utilities are almost like segmented monopolies because if you think about how utility works, they almost have a monopoly over a region because you're not going to have multiple electrical lines. You're not going to have multiple, transmission lines. You're going to have one provider who's got this government monopoly, designated for a certain area. Like in New York, if you're in New York, bro, everyone's got Con Edison, right? If you're in California, everyone's got PG&E. If you're in New Jersey, you've got, I don't know, who do you have in New Jersey? I forgot.
I think it's PSENG.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that because of this, I think you don't necessarily have to even compete. Like right now, Palantir, one of the challenges that they have is that they have exclusivity agreements in certain industries for their partner. So an example is with BP, right? They had this partnership with BP, which meant that they couldn't provide data analytics services to other oil companies because BP said, look, we're such a big partner. You can't go to our competitors and sell to them. Yeah. Utilities, they don't have that hang up because they're not competing against each other.
I mean, it's just another use case that they're going to keep getting customers with these specific use cases, which is awesome.
Couple super chats. Christian, can you answer this? I don't know what this is about, but
I don't know what this is about. I think I heard some comments on my video. I have no clue, to be honest. But
okay. So paperclip or stapler? Pick one real quick.
Stapler.
Okay. Blake Anderson, how do you think the conflict in UA will impact? You're talking about Ukraine. Well, we talked about it. Sham talked about how they're getting some business from it. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen in the next earnings, but they're getting some pretty big business from governments and a lot of companies like BMW to operationalize data through the crisis.
So Christian, the paperclip and the stapler, that was something that me and Sean were talking about. And I said, when I interview somebody for a prospective position, I usually ask them like, hey, what do you usually have on your desk? Do you have a paperclip or do you have a stapler? I said useless people have staplers because people who use staplers, literally you have to staple it and it's semi-permanent. If you need to undo something, you have to literally get a staple remover, remove it. Whereas someone who's practical, they just have a bunch of paper clips because you can just grab a paper, put it on there. If you need to take something out, you can take it out, put the paper clip back on,
I've seen random comments on my video on our podcast, I think it was, and I was like, "What are these people on about?" I just thought they're going crazy or something. So it makes sense.
Yep.
Last thing, let's talk about. I want to cover this real quick. Is the edge AI in space?
Yes.
So they launched some satellites with Satellogic, their partner, and they have their software connected to these sensors on these satellites. This is where we get into IoT, in which in real time their software can provide updates on Earth based upon what's happening in space, because the data doesn't have to be going into some cloud. That's the nature of what edge AI is, that it happens at the edge. It happens instantaneously. and you get insights and you can make data-driven decisions right from there. So how did you guys feel about that news?
Yeah, well, this was where Kathy was most bullish, if I remember correctly. She was stating that Palantir was 5+ years ahead in the context of edge AI. And at least from my understanding, I don't have the best expertise in this area, but edge AI is still kind of in inception phases. It's still not 100% figured out. And I think Palantir are likely to be, one of the leading players within this field. There's not many other companies that I know of, at least, that are so predominant within the field of edge AI. And I think this recent venture within space is an indication of Palantir's lead within this area. I'll be interested to hear what, Don, perhaps you think, if you have better understanding.
Yeah. So 50% of the world's data will be at the edge by 2026. 2026, somewhere between there. And
how do you know that? You read that somewhere? Or?
Gartner.
Okay.
Gartner. So that's where you see why companies like Cloudflare, who are literally have over 20% of the world's internet running on their edge network, and their POPs, their stock going crazy and having that data and really even wanting to take it to Amazon and other global hyperscalers with the idea of, instead of paying ingress and egress fees from the cloud, why don't you just host it on the edge, and not pay that, right? And I actually got to speak to a Palantir account executive out of Texas because wanted to see what we could do for our company, right? Like, how do we get our VMware using this, right? And he was just talking about Apollo and how that's what really everyone's excited about at Palantir. Like the use cases that they can do with drones and edge devices and what we're going to see with autonomous driving. I think the satellite stuff was more, maybe not more, but you could see more use cases from Gotham, right? From a military perspective, from all kinds of different areas from that. But from an edge overall, their Apollo technology is what we should really be digging into as time goes on. We're going to see more use cases that only they can do, and people won't have to go to a hyperscaler.
Chris, your thoughts on edge in space?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many applications for edge in space. The one that I found that's super interesting that I'm going to do a video on later this weekend is their partnership with NOAA, with National Atmospheric Organization.
Chris's videos, he be finding stuff no one knows.
Yeah.
No one knew about NOAA. I didn't know about NOAA. Chris is like, all right, yeah. There's another thing.
Because what happens is they are the ones that track weather, right? And not just weather for just locals, but everywhere around. If you think about how many businesses right now have to factor in weather as a part of their business making decisions, that's huge. So if Palantir can figure out using AI better models to figure out, even if it's saving some time on how to improve the timing on weather modeling, that could be huge for companies, right? So an example is if you looked at PG&E, that whole video, one of the things that it showed was that, hey, we knew a storm was coming, and because of Palantir, we were able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? How did Palantir know that storm was coming? Well, it got that data from somewhere, right? So the way that you get most of your weather data is from satellites, and now if you can integrate AI into that satellite, you can get better and more accurate weather data and also modeled out weather data. And especially if you run it against historical images, what happens is you get even more accurate. So think about it this way. The more data that you ingest, the better and more accurate your model becomes. And if Palantir can be the default provider of that modeling, they could sell that modeling software out to say, hey, listen, 2 weeks from now, Hurricane Amit is going to make landfall in this part of Florida. Guess what? If I have fuel deliveries, I'm going to not make those fuel deliveries that time. I'm going to actually build up an inventory of fuel in that specific area to disrupt my supply chain. So these are like the operational decisions that could be huge. Same thing with insurance companies to say, hey, what are the price of insurance should I charge someone living in the zip code based on, the modeling that I see? Well, I see that, over time, these are the areas that are going to be most impacted by climate change. So I'm going to make sure that I build that into the premiums that I'm charging this customer so that just in case something happens, the model shows me that there's an 80% likelihood that a storm is going to hit within the next 5 years, which means that I should put that into the premium, you know.
I got to
so
jump
it's
in on
things
this,
like that.
on this piece that you mentioned, because our one of our viewers, Ryan, said Nvidia has Earth 2.0, and I was like thinking exactly that. Is that one, Palantir and Nvidia? I don't know if you guys watched that video I recently did. They're actually listed as a partner for the Omniverse. So I was wondering with what
the hell is the Omniverse?
So the Omniverse is the enterprise metaverse that NVIDIA's created. So that way, So they've modeled a rendering digital twin of the Earth called Earth 2.0. And they've captured already 40 years of weather data, to Chris's point, of previous weather data to model hurricanes and different storm patterns and climate change. And so now they're sending out all their vehicles across the country, capturing AR data. And so they're modeling out this digital twin of the Earth to make decisions. And they do this for factories. They did it for BMW. They save BMW 30% on their global factories they built, because they could do digital twin stuff ahead of time.
Very, very cool stuff. I think that's going to be a wrap for us. Hour and 5 minutes. Talked about a lot of stuff. Thank you, Darntons, for being on. I know your name is Christian, but I'm just calling you Darntons. That's
it's so funny the way Americans say my name. It's funny.
How do you say it? Darntons?
Darntons.
Darntons?
with the R. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm sorry,
Christian. Do you have an American accent?
Oh, that's
yeah. Can you be like, I want a hamburger, and say it in an American way? Just be like, I want a hamburger.
I want a hamburger.
Yeah. Wait, no, we gotta just get. Yeah, all right. What's something else you could say that's American?
American. Good, man.
See, the funny thing is, they're actually speaking English. We're speaking American English, you know. So it's funny because we're like, oh, speak normal. Like, no, he's speaking normal. We're speaking with the accent.
Yeah.
You know?
Shawniverse. Say this right here. Shawniverse is on the way. Say that in an American accent.
Wait, say it again. I'll try to copy you.
Shawniverse is on the way.
Shawniverse is on the way.
Okay, there's still hints of the
No, you got to do a better sentence. You know, you got to give something.
What's
better.
a good American? Give me an American, like.
Come on.
Like Texas, like. Oh, here we go. It's something with guns. I was thinking, like, what was it? Give me liberty or give me death, right? Let's just do that.
Say again.
Right, say that.
I can't say this.
Just say the hamburger thing again. I like that. That was good.
No, the hamburger is boring, bro. That's how we got to end this pod on the right way.
I need to copy your voice. Go ahead. Say and I'll repeat.
You need to say, in America, I want my liberty, I want my guns, and I want my barbecue.
In America, I want my liberties.
You gotta take a deep breath. In America, I want my liberties, I want my guns, and I want my barbecue.
In America, I want my liberties, I want my guns, and I want my barbecue.
That's where we ended.
That was so good. That was good, dude. That was good. All
right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Darntons.
Thank you.
I know we just harassed you, but that's okay. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Before we go real quick, let me give you guys a shout out. So everyone, all 114 of you here, you guys should definitely be subscribing to Darntons and Dom and Chris. Chris and Darnton are in the description. Dom, I didn't know was going to be here. So he's not
dominating your investments. Just Google it on YouTube.
Yeah, so here we go. Darntons right there. A lot of awesome content. He's only 19 and he's big in the where's the other videos? I don't know why.
Yeah, this is the new we rebranded today. Podcast.
Okay. Well, follow this one.
Sure.
He's only 19. He's doing content big. And then who's the other guy? Oh yes, Dom, dominating your investment.
The old man.
Dom just came back. Boom. Lots of great content here.
There's an Earth 2.0 for you.
In fact, most popular was me and Dom, our interview back in January.
Yeah, that's true. Baby Yoda again showing up.
Old days. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend. Chris, I know we're supposed to talk. Are you free tomorrow? Because I gotta do something.
Yeah, that's totally fine. We can talk tomorrow.
All right, I'll text you tomorrow. All right, guys. Have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you.